my father tried to ruin my relationship with my long-term girlfriend by lying to her and threatening her because he doesn't think that she's good enough for me. So I confront him in front of the family and humiliate him. But then he tells me something about my girlfriend that makes me go back home, pack my bag, and move out immediately. Hello everyone. Something happened in my life that made me leave my girlfriend without telling her anything. And now I am not sure if I did the right thing. It's a long story, so keep reading. I'm Howard, 33 male, who has been dating my girlfriend Rachel, 30 female, for about 2 years. I'm chilling at a friend's party, just doing the whole mingling thing, when suddenly, Rachel walks in. Instantly, there's this spark, like one of those moments where you just click with someone. We hit it off right away, chatting about everything from movies to our mutual love for tacos, and before I knew it, we were swapping numbers and making plans to hang out again. Fast forward a bit, and we're officially dating. It's been over 2 years now, and let me tell you, time flies when you're having fun. Rachel's become a big part of my life, always there to support me through the ups and downs. We've been on adventures, laughed till our stomachs hurt, and shared countless memories that I wouldn't trade for anything. But then came the moment I've been kind of dreading, introducing Rachel to my dad Sam. I mean, I love my dad and all, but he's got these old school views sometimes that clash with my more modern way of thinking. Still, I hope for the best as we all sat down for dinner that night. Right off the bat, I could tell that something was off. My dad's usually a pretty easygoing guy, but there was this tension in the air that I couldn't ignore. And as the night went on, it became painfully clear that he didn't like Rachel, like at all. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe he just needed some time to warm up to her. But no matter what, it felt like he was always finding something to criticize. Whether it was her job, her sense of humor, or even the way she dressed, my dad never seemed to miss a chance to throw some shade her way. It was frustrating to say the least. Here I was, head over heels for this amazing woman, and yet my own dad couldn't seem to see past his own biases. Meanwhile, the rest of my family was totally smitten with Rachel. My mom, my siblings, and even my grandparents. They saw what I saw, someone caring, funny, and genuinely good-hearted. So why couldn't my dad? It was a question that nagged me at me constantly, eating away at the joy that I felt in my relationship. I tried talking to him about it, hoping we could have a heart-to-heart and sort things out, but every time that I brought it up, he just brushed it off, insisting that he had his reasons but never really elaborating. Despite my dad's disapproval of Rachel, I kinda brushed it off at first. I mean, sure, it bothered me, but I figured he would eventually come around once he got to know her better. Boy, was I wrong. Things took a turn for the worse one Friday night after a family dinner at my parents' place. Everything seemed normal enough. We ate, we laughed, we even played a round of charades. But then, out of nowhere, my dad dropped a bombshell on Rachel. He straight up told her that I was cheating on her. Yeah, you heard that right. According to him, I had been sneaking around with another girl behind Rachel's back, bringing her to family gatherings like it was no big deal. Now let me set the record straight. Rachel and I didn't have trust issues. We were solid, like rock solid. But hearing something like that from my own dad, it was like a punch to the gut. And while Rachel didn't say anything to me right then and there, I could tell that she was seething beneath the surface. Fast forward to when we got back to her place and all hell broke loose. She just exploded, yelling at me like I'd never seen before. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. And I was standing there, utterly baffled, trying to piece together what just happened. Then she told me what my dad had said. Suddenly, it all made sense. But even as I tried to reassure her, telling her that it was all a lie, showing her my phone to prove my innocence, it felt like the damage had already been done. It took her weeks, no, months for her to even begin to trust me again. And I don't blame her one bit. I mean, imagine hearing something like that from someone you're supposed to trust implicitly. It messes with your head and makes you question everything you thought you knew. But here's the kicker. When I confronted my dad about it, he denied ever saying anything to Rachel. He looked me dead in the eye and swore up and down that he hadn't uttered a single word about me cheating. And that's when it hit me. My dad wasn't just disapproving of Rachel. He was actively trying to sabotage our relationship. But why? What could possibly drive him to do something like that? It was a question that plagued me day and night, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I mean, sure, we'd had our differences before, but this was a whole new level of messed up. And try as I might, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was it jealousy, resentment, or was there something deeper going on? Something I couldn't even begin to comprehend. So after my dad pulled that whole stunt with Rachel, you would think that he would eventually come to his senses, right? Wrong. The guy was like a dog with a bone, refusing to let go of his grudge no matter what. I tried talking to him again, hoping maybe he'd see reason if I just laid it all out for him. But nope, he was as stubborn as ever. He kept insisting that he never said anything to Rachel, even when I straight up called him out on it. It was infuriating to say the least. But here's where things really took a turn for the worse. Like, I'm talking full-on soap opera level drama. One day, out of nowhere, my dad drops this bombshell on Rachel. If she doesn't dump me, I'm getting caught out of the will. Just like that. I mean, who does that? Threatening to disinherit your own kid just because you don't approve of the relationship. It was beyond messed up. And it didn't stop there. Oh no. My dad was just getting started. He would start dropping hints left and right, making it crystal clear that if Rachel didn't walk away from me, I would be left with nothing. Like, what kind of parent uses their own money as a weapon against their own flesh and blood? But wait, it gets even crazier. One time during a family gathering, he straight up pulled me aside and laid it all out on the table. He said if I didn't break things off with Rachel, he would make sure that I regretted it for the rest of my life. Talk about intense. And it wasn't just empty threats either. No, my dad was dead serious about making my life a living hell if I didn't do what he wanted. He'd start cutting me off from the family events, excluding me from important decisions, and basically doing everything in his power to make me choose between him and Rachel. It was like a freaking ultimatum, and I was caught right in the middle of it. On one hand, I had my dad, who I love and respect despite his flaws. On the other hand, I had Rachel, the woman I couldn't imagine my life without. It was a lose-lose situation, no matter which way I turned. But you know what? I refused to let my dad's threats dictate my happiness. I refused to let him control me with his money and his power plays. So I made a choice. I chose Rachel. At the next family dinner, I decided to talk to my dad. I started off calm, trying to keep my cool despite the rage boiling inside me. But as I spoke, the anger crept in, and before I knew it, I was practically shouting. I called him out on everything. The lies about Rachel, the threats, the manipulation. I laid it all out there for everyone to see. I could see the shock on his face, the way his eyes widened and his jaw dropped. For a split second, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered everything he'd put Rachel through, everything he'd put me through, and the sympathy evaporated. I didn't hold back. I didn't sugarcoat a single word. I wanted him to know just how much he'd hurt us, just how much damage he had caused with his selfishness and his pride. And let me tell you, I didn't mince words. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and heavy like a fog, but I didn't care. I was done playing nice, done pretending like everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. It was time to air out the dirty laundry, no matter how uncomfortable it made everyone feel. And you know what? It felt damn good, cathartic even. Like I was finally standing up for myself, for Rachel, for our relationship. Sure, it might have been messy, but sometimes you've got to make a scene to get your point across. As for my dad, well, let's just say he didn't take it too well. He tried to defend himself, to justify his actions, but it was like he was grasping at straws. The truth was out there for everyone to see, and no amount of excuses could change that. I could see the shame in his eyes, the way he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. And yeah, part of me felt a twinge of guilt putting him on the blast like that. Then I remembered everything he'd done, everything he'd said, and the guilt melted away. However, from what I found out, the thing that I thought was a shame was something else. So there I was, standing in the middle of the room, heart pounding in my chest, as I laid it all out for my family. I tell them about Rachel, about how she's been my rock through all the chaos, about how she's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, as I spilled my guts to them. But you know what? I didn't care. Because for the first time in a long time, I was speaking my truth, and nothing, not even my dad's disapproval, was going to stop me. I told him how much I love Rachel, how she was the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I told him how I was going to marry her, how I couldn't imagine my life without her by my side. And you know what else? I told them that I didn't need or want my dad's money. I could see the shock on their faces and the way they exchanged nervous glances, but I didn't care. Because this was my life, my decision, and I was not going to let anyone, not even my own family, dictate how I lived it. I was ready to walk away, to put an end to this whole ridiculous charade once and for all. But my dad wasn't having it. He insisted we have a chat, just the two of us. So, begrudgingly, I agreed. I figured maybe he had finally come to his senses, ready to apologize for all the drama he had caused. Boy, was I wrong. We headed out to the backyard, my stepmom trailing behind us like a shadow, and that's when my dad dropped the bombshell of all bombshells. He started off by saying there was a reason he had been trying to break me and Rachel up. I mean, no kidding, Sherlock. But then he went on to tell me this wild story about his past. Apparently, before he met my stepmom, he had been involved with this younger girl who was basically Rachel's doppelganger. And get this, she was a friend who was a total con artist, like something straight out of a movie. According to my dad, this friend of hers was into some seriously shady stuff. I'm talking about scamming guys online, playing them like fiddles for their money. And to top it all off, she was knee-deep in the whole sugar daddy, sugar baby scene. Like, who even does that? As my dad started recounting this wild tale from his past, I couldn't help but feel a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. Confusion, first and foremost, was the dominant one. I mean, why on earth was he suddenly bringing up some girl he used to date before he met my stepmom? It just didn't make any sense. I stood there, trying to process it all as he continued to spill the beans. Part of me wanted to interrupt, to demand an explanation for why he was dredging up some ancient history out of nowhere. But another part of me was just too stunned to speak. When my dad dropped that bombshell on me, claiming that Rachel was the same girl he used to date, who was into scamming guys online, I was completely floored. Shock doesn't even begin to cover it. I mean, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. Here I was, standing in my own backyard, trying to wrap my head around this insane revelation. It was like my whole world had been turned upside down in an instant. I mean, Rachel, my Rachel, the woman I love more than anything in the world? The thought of her being involved in something so shady, so downright deceitful, was like a punch to the gut. But even as my dad continued to spin his tale, laying out all the supposed evidence against Rachel, I couldn't bring myself to believe it. I mean, sure, my dad had lied to me before, more than once actually, but this was next level crazy. He went on to tell me how he and my stepmom had contacted my ex, of all people, to confirm their suspicions. Apparently, they had sent her a picture of Rachel, and she had confirmed that it was the same girl she used to know. And if that wasn't enough to make my head spin, he started spouting off all these details about Rachel's supposed scamming antics. According to him, she had this whole online persona, luring unsuspecting guys in with her charm and beauty, only to leave them high and dry once she had gotten what she wanted. I mean, it was something out of a bad movie. The more he talked, the more I felt like I was drowning in a sea of doubt and confusion. But deep down, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling of disbelief. I mean, Rachel, the sweet, caring, compassionate woman who had stood by me through thick and thin? It just didn't add up. Sure, my dad had his reasons for wanting to break us up, misguided as they may have been, but this was too much, even for him. And yet, as much as I wanted to dismiss his claims as nothing more than the ramblings of a delusional old man, a part of me couldn't help but wonder, what if he was right? What if Rachel wasn't who she claimed to be? Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, my dad went ahead and dropped another bomb on me. I mean, seriously, could this day get any more insane? According to my dad's ex, Rachel was still out there, prowling on those sugar daddy sugar baby websites, playing guys like a fiddle. I mean, my brain couldn't even process it at first. I didn't want to believe it. I mean, how could I? Rachel, the love of my life, my partner in crime, still active on those sketchy websites? It just didn't add up. But then my stepmom chimed in, showing me the app on her phone. They had created a fake profile, And lo and behold, there was Rachel, clear as day. My heart sank like a stone. Seeing her picture there on that app, it felt like a punch to the gut. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. I didn't know what to do. Here I was, standing face to face with a cold, hard truth, and it felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. Sure, my dad had lied to me before, more times than I can count actually, but this was different. This was a betrayal on a whole other level. I felt like a fool, like I had been played for a fool by the one person I thought I could trust with my whole heart. As the reality of it all sank in, I couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sense of sadness and disappointment wash over me. How could Rachel do this to me, to us? I thought we had something special, something real, but now it felt like it had all been one big lie. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved could do something like that. So without saying a word to anyone, I made a split-second decision. I had to get out of there. I needed space to process everything that just happened. I told my dad that I was leaving, grabbed my keys, and hightailed out of there as fast as I could. Rachel was at home when I got back, and she asked me how dinner was, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. How could I? I felt like my whole world had been shattered into a million pieces, and I didn't know how to put it back together. Instead, I just grabbed a bag, packed up my essentials, and headed for the door. Rachel tried to talk to me, asking me what was wrong and why I was doing this, but I couldn't find the words to explain. How could I tell her that I had lost all trust in her, that everything I thought I knew about her had been a lie? It was like a knife to the heart, watching her plead with me, tears streaming down her face. But I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Couldn't bear to see the pain in her eyes. It was bad enough that I had to deal with my own shattered heart. I couldn't handle seeing hers break too. And so, without a word, I turned and walked out the door, leaving Rachel behind in a cloud of confusion and heartache. Maybe it was selfish of me. Maybe I should have given her a chance to explain herself. But at that moment, all I could think about was getting away, getting some distance from the chaos and the confusion swirling around me. So, am I the a-hole for packing my bags and moving out after finding out that my girlfriend is an active member of a sugar daddy sugar baby website? After I stormed out of our place, Rachel kept blowing up my phone with calls and texts, but I just wasn't ready to talk. How could I? My head was spinning, my heart was in pieces, and I needed some time to process everything that had gone down. So I did what any sane person would do. I hightailed it back to my parents' house to regroup and figure out my next move. It might not have been the most glamorous solution, but hey, it was better than sitting around wallowing in self-pity. For now, I'm just taking a break from it all. I needed some space to clear my head, to make sense of the mess my life had become. So I texted Rachel that I needed some time to myself, and that I would get back to her in a few days once I had sorted things out. And you know what? It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Sure, I still had a long road ahead of me, but at least I was taking the first step towards healing. With my world turned upside down, I found solace in the unwavering support of my parents. They were there for me every step of the way, offering me a shoulder to lean on and a listening ear whenever I needed it. Where would I be without them? As I navigated through the storm of emotions swirling inside me, I found myself drawn to the familiar comfort of Rachel and its old photos. They were like a window to the past, a reminder of all the happy moments we had shared together. I couldn't help but smile as I flipped through them, each one bringing back a flood of memories, the laughter, the adventures, the quiet moments spent simply enjoying each other's company. It was like reliving a lifetime of memories in the span of a few short minutes. But mixed in with the happiness was a heavy dose of sadness. Looking at those photos, it was hard not to feel a pang of longing for the way things used to be. Sure, things weren't perfect, far from it actually, but they were ours, you know. Hello everyone. I know a lot of guys thought that I shouldn't have trusted my dad or left without giving her a chance to explain everything. And after I cooled down a bit, I also realized the same. I started to see things from a different perspective. Sure, my dad's claims were pretty damning, but Rachel had always been there for me, and as much as it hurt, I knew I owed it to both of us to hear her side of the story. so I mustered up the courage and headed back home to face the music. Rachel was there, looking surprised to see me. I mean, who could blame her after the way that I stormed out? But despite it all, she welcomed me with open arms, asking me why I had left without a word. I didn't say anything at first, just stood there, staring at her, trying to make sense of it all. And then finally, I asked her if there was anything she wanted to tell me, anything at all. Her response, nothing, nada, zilch. I mean, talk about frustrating. Here I was, pouring my heart out, practically begging her to come clean, and she was acting like nothing was wrong. So I did what any self-respecting person would do. I whipped out my phone and showed her the evidence. I mean, seeing her profile on that sugar daddy sugar baby website, it was like a gut punch all over again. I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, part of me was hoping for some kind of explanation, some reasonable excuse that would make everything okay again. But deep down, I knew the truth would probably hurt, and hurt it did. When I showed her the profile, she tried to brush it off at first, claiming it was an old account that she hadn't used in ages. But when I pointed out that it showed the profile was active just a day ago, she couldn't deny it any longer. It was like watching the color drain from her face as the truth sank in. I mean, talk about a gut punch. Here I was, desperately clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some kind of innocent explanation for all this, and she was standing there, caught red-handed. But instead of coming clean, instead of admitting her mistake, she doubled down, insisting that she didn't do anything wrong. I mean, can you believe that? After everything, she had the audacity to try and justify her actions. And in that moment, I felt this overwhelming sense of betrayal wash over me. I mean, here I was, pouring my heart out, practically begging her to be honest with me, and she was standing there, lying to my face. It was like a knife to the heart, watching her try to wriggle out of it to shift the blame onto anyone but herself. I mean, how could she do this to me, to us? It felt like my whole world was crashing down around me, and she didn't even seem to care. And as she finally admitted the truth, that yes, she used the account, but no, she didn't do anything, I felt this overwhelming sense of rage bubbling up inside me. I mean, how dare she? How dare she lie to me like that, to betray my trust in the worst possible way? As I stood there, reeling from the bombshell Rachel had just dropped on me, I knew there was only one question left to ask. About the scams. I mean, it was like ripping off a band-aid, knowing that whatever she said next would seal our fate one way or another. And you know what? Surprisingly, she didn't even try to deny it. I mean, there was no excuse, no attempt to shift the blame onto anyone else. She just came right out and admitted it. She had been scamming people to make ends meet. I couldn't believe it. I mean, here I was, thinking I knew everything there was to know about Rachel, and yet she had been living this double life right under my nose. It was like a punch to the gut, leaving me reeling with shock and disbelief. But even as the truth came tumbling out, I couldn't bring myself to look away. I mean, part of me wanted to scream, to lash out at her for betraying my trust in the worst possible way. But another part of me just felt this overwhelming sense of sadness, like my whole world was crashing down around me. And as Rachel stood there, tears streaming down her face, begging me for forgiveness, I knew that I couldn't do it. I mean, how could I? How could I forgive her for lying to me, for deceiving me, for breaking the trust that was the foundation of our relationship? It was like watching my heart shatter into a million pieces, knowing that, no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't put it back together again. I mean, trust is like fragile glass. Once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. And as Rachel continued to cry and plead with me, I knew that it was over. I mean, there was no going back from this, no way to undo the damage that had been done. It was like the end of a chapter in my life, and I couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sense of loss wash over me. But even as I said the words, as I told Rachel that it was over between us, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. I mean, sure, she had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but she was still the woman I loved, the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with. Hey everyone, it's been a month since my last update, but here I am, back with some news. Rachel and I are officially done. Yeah, you heard that right. It's over. I mean, it's been a roller coaster of emotions these past couple of weeks, let me tell you. I spent days agonizing over what to do, going back and forth in my head, trying to make sense of it all. But in the end, I knew that I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies and deceit. So yesterday, I finally bit the bullet and packed up my stuff from our place. I mean, it wasn't easy, saying goodbye to the life we had built together, but deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. And now here I am, in a new place, trying to pick up the pieces and move on with my life. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been tough. I've had more than a few sleepless nights, tossing and turning, trying to make sense of it all. But slowly, bit by bit, I'm starting to find my footing again. I mean, sure, there are still moments when the pain hits me like a ton of bricks, when I can't help but wonder what could have been. But I'm learning to take it one day at a time, to focus on building a future for myself without Rachel by my side. And you know what? It's not bad at all. I mean, sure, I miss her. Miss the way that she used to make me laugh, the way she could always brighten up even the darkest of days. But at the end of the day, I know that I deserve better than someone who would lie to me and betray my trust. So yeah, I'm still dealing with this stuff. I mean, it's not easy moving on from someone you thought you would spend the rest of your life with. But I'm getting there, slowly but surely. And who knows, maybe this is just the beginning of a whole new chapter in my life. I mean, they say that every ending is just a new beginning, right? And if that's true, then I can't wait to see what the future has in store for me. And that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We'll be seeing you in the next one.